What is up, everyone? Welcome to day two of the front end bootcamp by Devsnest. I'm your trainer, Gaurav, and how is everybody doing today? Let me know in the chat. So, let me introduce myself. I've been working as a web developer for close to 9 years, and in the past 2 years, I have been focusing on mentoring and I've been doing a lot of freelance work. And I've been able to work with a large number of talented students and help shape their careers. You guys can let me know a bit about yourself, where you guys are from, and what is it that you're doing currently? Are you studying, or or have you just started working? What is it that you're doing? You can let me know in the chat. In the meantime, while we are waiting for others to join, you can let me know about this. Okay, so some of you are working, some of you are students. So okay, someone is the job analyst, um, and some of you are looking out for a job. That's great. And okay, yeah, I guess some of you are working, some of you are students, some of you are looking out for jobs. All right. Okay. So we have someone who is from Nigeria as well. That's great. So the course details are available on the Devsnest website, and you can find information related to that um, in the description of this video. All right. And we have a very active community in Discord as well. Um, Make sure that you're present there. After we go through today's session, we can cover the doubts over there in the Mahasabha voice channel. And yeah, so I guess we should begin today's lesson. So, if you guys remember, yesterday I had given you some homework. So, we'll begin by working on the homework from yesterday, and then we'll move on to introduction to CSS. We'll learn how to style the contents of our website, and we'll learn about the CSS box model, and we'll learn a couple of tricks to help you advance in your way to becoming a better web developer. Okay, so let's start now. I guess some of you guys were having issues yesterday with regards to VS Code. I had created the folders and everything using a command line. You don't need to do that. So today what we will be doing is, let me open the Finder. So I have this folder with me, streams. Today is the second day, right? Let me zoom this a little bit. And within this, I've added a image which I will need for creating my portfolio. Let me create a new folder over here. Let's call it as portfolio. Okay. Then what I will do is I have my VS Code open, right? And I will go to the file menu and I'll say open. And here I will just go to the folder which I just created. So for me, it's in documents, Devsnest, then streams, intro to CSS, and the portfolio folder. Okay. So this is how you can give a path, and then you click on open. It should open that folder for you. All right. And then when we want to create a new file, we click on this plus icon and let's create a new file, call it as index.html. All right, so we have our file created. Okay, and let me move this to the side. Okay, let's, all right, is it all clear? You guys can see my code editor and the browser clearly. Let me know if the font size is good enough for you guys. Are you able to see it clearly? All right, great. So once again, we'll begin by we'll make use of this exclamation mark, and if I hit tab, it creates this entire structure for me, right? How we saw yesterday. And so this shortcut is known as emit. It is a feature provided by VS Code, and it allows us to do this auto code completion, right? So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to change the title for this document. Okay, so let's call it as Gaurav's portfolio. Okay, let's save this. And in order to open this file in the browser, what you can do is you can go to the path and just drag this over here. Okay, oh, I need to drag it at the address bar. All right, and if I hit enter, it should show me the title over here, and it says Gaurav's portfolio. All right, and the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to add our image. So let me add an image tag. I have my image available with me. Let me just move it inside this portfolio folder. You can see that it's visible over here now. And let me just link it over here by providing the source attribute, the value. So the name of the image is gaurav.jpg, and I'll just say profile image Gaurav. All right, and let's save this. Let's do a refresh, and you can see that the image is now visible. The size of the image is quite large, so let's give it a width of 200. Rather, let's make it 300, and let's also give it a height of 300. Let me save this. If we do a refresh, we can see that the image has been resized. The next thing that we wanted to add is let me add some text over here. So I'll use the h1 tag and add some content over here. So I'll say hi, I am Gaurav. Okay, and if we do a refresh, you can see this text. Now the next thing that we wanted to do is add some information, an about me section, right? So I'll make use of the heading 2 tag, and let me add the text about me. And then after this, let's add a paragraph. So I have some text ready with me. It's some information about myself. Let me just paste it over here. Okay, and give me a sec. If we do a refresh, you can see the about me section and there is some text available over here. Okay, let me get rid of a couple of things. And okay, so we have added a paragraph over here. And what we will do is let's add another paragraph. I have a couple of paragraphs which tell you a bit of couple of things about me. So let me just add those over here. If we do a refresh, we can see the paragraphs have been added. The next thing is that we wanted to add a qualification section. So let's add another heading. Okay, let's call it as qualifications. And inside that, let's add an ordered list, and let's add the list items. So I have done Bachelor of Engineering in Computers. Okay, and I have also done a diploma course known as CDAC in Wireless and Mobile Computing. All right, let me do a refresh. And this information is visible to us as well. The next thing that we wanted to add is the unordered list, and I will be adding my hobbies over here. Okay, and I'll be making use of the unordered list, and within that I want to add uh, 3 LIs. So we're using a shortcut which is coming from Emmet. So since we want to add a UL and within that an LI and 3 of those, so I'm using this shortcut. Now if I hit tab, it will auto complete that code for me. Okay, so my first hobby is for example swimming. Then the other hobby is listening to music. And my third hobby is, what is my third hobby? Okay, I like to draw. Okay, so my third hobby is drawing. Okay, let's save this. Let's do another refresh and we can see the hobbies have been added as a series of unordered list items. Okay, then after that what I want to add is my social media links. So let's add another heading, reach me at. Okay, and now what we will do is we want links to our social media, my social media website. You will be adding your own social media profile links. So how do we do that? We do that using the hyperlink tag or the anchor tag, right? So I want 3 anchor tags because I'll be adding links to my LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Okay. So if I just hit tab, it does the auto code completion for us. So this feature is known as emit. I'm just repeating it once again. All right. Let me just quickly add the links to my profile. So the first one is Twitter. Then the next one is LinkedIn. Okay. And the third link is Instagram. Okay. So let me add the link for Instagram. Let me save this. If you're wondering how the code is getting formatted every time I'm saving, so the shortcut for saving is Command and S on Mac, and on Windows it would be Control S. Okay, and if you're not sure what a shortcut is for a particular thing, what you can do is you can click on this icon, open the command palette, and just search for the thing, the command that you're trying to execute. So I was trying to execute save, and if you see, it is showing the name of the command as well as the shortcut over here. So in case you have any confusion, you can make use of this command palette feature to find out what is the shortcut for a particular command. Okay. And the next thing that we are going to do is, for the formatting part, what I'm using is, if you click on this icon, which is for extensions, and search for prettier. Okay, so you can search for this extension. Okay, prettier, this one, you can select it, and you can click on install. I already have it installed for me, so that's why I'm getting this option. And then what you need to do is, you need to open these settings and just search for format on save. It should show you the option for that, and you just need to enable this. Okay, so it should enable prettier for you, and whenever you try to save the document, it will format it automatically for you. The prettier extension has some rules on how to, structure the contents of a particular file. It has some best practices included in it, and it's configurable as well. So we will be making use of this extension and linking it like this, so that whenever we click on save, our document is auto formatted. Okay, so it's just a tool to help you with your development within the code editor. It has nothing to do with the formatting happening on the website, just to be clear. Okay, all right. So I have added these three links. What I want to do is, within these links, I want to also show the icons, okay, or the images for these particular social media profiles. So I have found out a website, which from where we can get those icons for free. So let me just open that. So the website is called https icon pack. Give me a sec, actually. Let me just quickly copy that. This will be the URL for this will be available to you when you're doing the questions related to the day today on the Devsnest website. So the icons will be available to you. Okay, and we'll just search for all the icons that we need. So for example, I'll just go to icons, and what we need is the icon. So I have all the icons ready with me. I'll just paste them over here. So in order to add the image for the icon, what we will do is make use of the image tag, give it a source. So this was the icon for LinkedIn. So what I will do is I'll place it under the anchor tag, which is related to LinkedIn. Okay, so let me just move this over here. Okay, all right, and we have added the image. Let me do a quick refresh, and we can see this is the image. We want the image to be slightly small, so let's give it a width of 30 and a height of 30. When I don't specify any unit, it means pixels. All right, and similarly, let's add the icon for Twitter and Instagram. Okay, so once again, I'll be using an image tag. Let me give the source. Okay, and for this also we'll be making use of the same dimensions. And once again, let me just quickly add the icon for Instagram. Okay, so we use the image tag, give it a give it the source for the Instagram icon. Let's save this, and once again let's set a height and width of 30. Let me do a quick refresh and we can see all of these icons over here. So if you remember from yesterday's lesson, we can nest tags, right, within another tag. So this is known as the parent tag, and within it we have the image tag. So this is known as the parent tag or the container tag, because this element contains the image tag. All right, so in its entirety, this entire anchor tag and all of the content in its entirety, this is known as an HTML element. All right, so all of these collectively are known as HTML elements, and individually we can, like, to refer to like different properties, we call them as tags, right? Because each tag has a different behavior, right? But as a whole, this is an element, this is an element, this is another element. So I just wanted to clarify the terminology associated with this, right? Because some of you guys had questions, what's the difference between an element and a tag? So this is a tag, and as a whole it's known as an element. Okay, everything, whatever is there inside, in between the tags and the attributes and everything, that's known as an element. Okay, um, and another thing that we want to do is when we click on these images, we want to open them in a new browser tab. So we will use the target attribute and set the value to blank. Okay, so let me just copy this and paste it here. All right, let me save this. Let's do a refresh and we can see that these icons have been added. If I click on any particular one, it's opening that in the new tab. Okay, so this was the homework from yesterday. I hope most of you guys were able to do it on your own, because we have covered all the topics which were taught yesterday in this portfolio exercise. And today we will be adding more styling and make it look even more better compared to yesterday. And yeah, so we'll come back to this in just a little bit. Let's get started with today's lesson. But before that, let me ask you if there are any doubts. Okay, so most of you are saying that it is clear to you. All right, so um, let's learn another tag, and then we'll just move on to the styling part. Okay, so another information that I want to add over here is the let me add some information with regards to the technologies that I know. So technologies, and we learn a new tag today. Let's call it let's not call it as it is the table tag. Okay, so it allows us to organize the data in rows and columns. Okay, so the name of the tag is table, as you might have guessed. And within the table, since we want to add a row first, so we make use of the tr tag within it, which is short for the table row. All right, and since we want to define the headers of the columns, we make use of the th tag, and I want 3 of those. All right, so we will be adding the heading front end, back end, and data base. All right, let me save this. Let's do a quick refresh and we can see these three things, right? The next thing that we want to do is we want to define another row, and within this row we want to add some data. So in this case, the tag that we're going to use is td for table data. All right, so within front end I want to show html. For example, let's do a refresh. So we can see that this row has been added and the first column has been added. So this defines the columns in the header. This defines the columns in a particular row. Okay, so we have HTML, then we have CSS. Never mind. Okay, we are filling out the backend right now, correct? So first column, second column, third column, okay, like we still need to add one. So HTML in backend I can say node JS, and for database let's say MySQL. Okay, let's save this, and you can see under these columns, right, these columns are appearing in bold, and the data associated with that column is appearing on the next line. Okay, similarly if I want to add another row, so I can make use of the tr, and let's add a few more table definitions over here. All right, so this allows us to add cells basically. Okay, and so basically the next thing we want to add over here is css, and then for example I want to add ruby, or rather rails, and another database, for example mongo. All right, mongodb. Okay, if I do a refresh, you can see that it has added another row over here with these cells and these values. And similarly, let's create another row. So I'll just duplicate this, and the shortcut for this is shift and option and the down arrow key. On Windows, instead of the option key you can press control, so it would be control shift, either up arrow key or the down arrow key. So this would just duplicate the selection that you had earlier, right? Okay, and here we will just change this to JS for JavaScript, and here we can have ASP.NET, and here we can have Postgres. Okay, let's do a refresh, and you can see the third row has been added. So I just wanted to introduce you guys to the table tag. So it allows us to organize the data in a tabular structure. Okay, so now let's move on to the interesting part for today's lesson, which is how do we style our content. Okay, so for that purpose, what I will do is I'll just create a let me create a new folder over here, and let me call it as intro to CSS. Let me open that. Oops, let me just open. Give me a sec. Open folder, and then intro to CSS. All right, and within this let's create a new index.html, and we'll be coming back to our portfolio, but first we'll just learn a couple of concepts, and then we'll come back to our portfolio, apply whatever we have learned today to our portfolio. Okay, all right, so let me set up the structure, and let's give this intro to CSS. Let's update the title, and I want to open this file. So what I will do is just reveal this file in Finder, And let's open another tab, drag it here, and we have it open. And here, let me just increase the font size slightly. Okay. So if you have noticed so far, whenever we're using a tag, right, this is the heading. There is some sort of styling already applied to this, right? So this is the styling which is coming from the browser. But suppose we want to modify this styling, right? So how do we do that? Okay, there is some styling which is coming from the browser, and just to view what that styling is, I'm just right clicking on that element and clicking on inspect. So this opens the developer tools for us. Let me just increase the size of this. Okay, and let's zoom slightly so that you guys can view it clearly. And if you see this area, all right, in the elements tab, if you see this section where we have styles, so there's already some styling applied to the heading element, right? So it has a font size of 2em, there is some margin, and there is some font weight. So font weight has been set to bold, which basically makes this text appear as bold, and we have a large font size, right? And if you notice this area, it mentions that this is coming from the user agent style sheet. So what this means, that this is coming from the browser's default styling, right? Okay, now suppose we want to modify this style. Let's see how we can do that. So in order to do that, we can make use of a special attribute known as the style. Now suppose I want to change the color for this element. Okay, so there is a property known as color, and let's give it the color red, for example, red. Let me save this, and if I do a refresh, you can see the color of the heading has been changed to red. Okay, so by making use of the style attribute, we are able to do that. Okay, we are able to modify the style. And let's make another small change over here. Let's install another extension that will save our time. So let's go to the extensions tab and search for this extension known as the live server. Okay, this is the extension. For me, it is already installed. Once you install it, you will see this icon at the bottom of the screen. Okay, what this allows us to do is it allows us to run a web server right from our Visual Studio Code, and it has some advantages. The advantage is that whenever we are making any change to our code, it auto refreshes the URL over here. All right, so instead of using the file path and using that and every time refreshing this, I don't want to waste our time, so we'll make use of this extension live server, and we'll use that to view this file in the browser. Okay, so let me just close this. Once you have it installed, you can just click on this go live icon, or you can right click and you should have this in the context menu. Okay, you right click on the file and you should have this available, open with live server, and it should show you a shortcut as well. So I'll click on this. Either you can click on this or you can click on this icon over here, go live. Okay, right now I'll just click on this from the context menu. Okay, so it is telling us that the server has started at port 5500. Okay, so basically it just opened the same file, but instead of using the file system, we are using a web server which is local to our machine, and the contents are being served at this port. Okay, So 127.0.0.1, this is known as the loopback address. So it allows your machine to act as a web server, and you can specify different ports. So the server will, you can access the server by specifying this address 127.0.0.1, or you can make use of, instead of remembering this thing, you can just type local host, okay, and the port number, and if we hit enter right now, we will be seeing the same content, okay. So either you can make use of the address, IP address 127.0.0.1, or you can type this text localhost 5500, and it will just serve the contents uh, available over here, okay. And the reason that we're using this is, suppose I want to add another h1 tag, and let me add some content over here, another h1 tag. Once I hit save, it will automatically refresh it in the browser, okay. So this is the advantage of using this extension live server. It will save us a lot of time, okay. All right, so let's get back to what we were learning. So we learned that we wanted to change the color of this heading, and we did that using the style attribute. There are other attributes as well. Now what we want to do is we want to apply the same style to all of the headings, okay. Let me add another heading tag over here. So let's just say third heading tag, right? Let me save this. And since I want to give it the same color, what I have to do is I'll just make use of the style attribute and paste it over here, okay. So it has turned all of these tags to the color for all of these tags as red. But do you know what is the problem over here? I wanted to give all of these tags the same color, but I had to repeat all of these attributes, right? This is like repetitive, right? This is the repetitive part that I'm talking about. And there is a way by which we can basically avoid this repetitiveness. So for that purpose, instead of defining these styles inline, okay, by inline, I mean that we are defining all these styles in place. So for example, I want to change the font size as well, okay. I want the font size to be 16, not 16, say for example 32 pixels for this particular heading, okay. And when I save this, you can see that this has become larger than before. And if I change it to say 40, it's even more larger, right? So this way of adding a style, this is known as inline styling, and this is just specific to this particular element. Now suppose I want to give the same styling to all of the three headings, okay, and I can do so with the help of the style tag, okay. So what I will do is let me define a style tag over here, and instead of writing our styling properties like this, what we will do is we will be making use of a rule, right? So we want to give all of the heading tags a red color, okay. So what I will do is, first let me just get rid of all of these styles, okay. And once again everything is back to the way it was, and I want to select all of these heading tags, right? So what I will say is, since I want to select all of the heading tags, I will say h1, the name of the tag, and I will open curly brackets, right? And since I want all of these headings to have a red color, what I will say is I'll make use of the color attribute and give it the color red. If I save this, All right, you can see all of the heading tags have been colored red. Okay, so this way of so earlier we were using inline styling, which was very specific, but if we wanted to repeat the styling across multiple tags, we can make use of the style tag, and within that we defined a rule. All right, so the rule can either have the name of an element, and there are other ways of selecting particular elements. We'll be getting to that. The first way of targeting a particular element is by just specifying the name of that element and the styling information that we want to provide. So we just we open and close the curly brackets, and in between we specify the styling information. So for example, I want to change the font size for all of them, so I can just say font size 40 pixels. All right, and once I save this, you can see all of the heading tags have their styles. The font size has been increased for all of them. Okay, all right. Now the next thing that we want to do is this styling is being applied to all of the tags, right? What if I want to change the style for just one of these tags, not for all of them? Okay, so the way I can do this is with the help of a special attribute known as the ID, which will allow us to uniquely identify this heading tag. So let me just give it the heading. Let me just give it the ID like first. Okay, first heading, for example. And once I save this, there is no visual change, but this is just telling. If we inspect this, you can see within the elements tab that this ID attribute has been added. Okay, and what I want to do is, let me get rid of this and I'll just comment this out. So all of the tags are now back to their original state, and I just want to change the color for this heading tag. All right, so if I type h1, that means all of them will be selected, right? But I have defined this ID attribute. So the way I define a rule, or I target just this element using the ID attribute, is that for accessing the ID, I make use of this hash sign, and I specify the value of the ID attribute that we have defined over here, and I just paste it. Okay, so this is known as the ID selector. Okay, ID selector. All right, and this is how you can add comments in CSS. The shortcut for this is Command K and Command C. On Windows, you just have to replace command with control. Okay, and the same way I just open and close the curly brackets, and since I just want to target this element and change its color to blue, for example, say royal blue, and if I just save this, you can see only the color for this particular element has been updated. Okay, so is this clear? The first way was that we were targeting the element using the element selector. So that was the first way. Okay, this is the first way. This is the second way, by making use of the ID selector, right? And so by default, now I have set all of the h1 tags to have the red color. Now since this rule, this thing in its entirety is known as a CSS rule. Okay, this rule comes after the h1 tag, this rule, right? So this takes precedence. Okay, so this h1 tags, this particular h1 tag gets this color, and the remaining are getting the red color along with the font size of 40 pixels. Okay, so even this one has a font size of 40 pixel. If we inspect it, it's just that it has a different color, right? So you can see that by default it was applied the color red, but it's being striked out because this rule is taking precedence. All right, so in CSS, you need to remember that the order in which you define rules, that the if a property has been repeated, the second time where it appears, the second property will take precedence over the first one. Okay, and the rest of the rules will be applied as it is. All right. So far, are you guys clear? Yeah, so there was a question if we change the order of the styling, right? So as I told you, the order is important. So if I move this here, uh, all of the, since this is very specific, right? Over here, we are just targeting a specific element. So this is the beauty of the ID selector. We are targeting a specific element, and so that is why the color is not being replaced. Okay, all right, so we'll be coming back to like why this, what I had just told you, why that thing didn't work. We'll be coming back to that in one of the lessons, like along with the order and also the type of rule that you're using. There is some precedence. Okay, like the one type of ruling takes preference over the other. So the ID is super specific, so no matter where you place it, it will always take precedence over the general rule. Okay, all right. The next thing that we want to do is so far what we have done is we have defined styles. The third way of defining styles is that we can make use of something known as a class. So there is an attribute known as the class, and let's give a name over here. So for example, I want that this tag has the color brown. Okay, so I've defined a class. I've defined an attribute class and given it the value brown. Now let's define the rule for this brown. Okay, so in order to target a class, you just precede it with the dot or the period character, and you give the name of the class that you have specified over here, and let's give it a color, for example brown, right? And let me save this, and you can see that this tag has changed the color to brown because this element is getting this brown class. Okay, all right, so this is another way by which we can target elements. So this is the third way, using the class attribute. Okay, this was the third way. Now what I will do is I will change the order once again. Okay, so even this is more specific. So even though we have said that all these styles the h1 tag is coming right at the bottom, but even this has preference over the element level. Okay, all right, and I can have multiple classes. So for example, let me add another class. Let me call it as royal blue. So you can give any name, and let's give it the color royal blue, for example. And let me add this royal blue class over here. So this is how you can define multiple classes. And if I save this, you can see that this tag has got the royal blue color. That is because the first class that is being applied to this element is brown, and then we are applying royal blue. All right. So this class would have been applied first, then this one's. So the second one would take precedence, right? So that is why this has been replaced. This rule has overridden that particular rule. Okay. So royal blue has taken precedence over the brown class. And the good thing about this inspector tool is, suppose I want to get rid of this class, all I need to do is uncheck it. Okay, so you can see once again this rule has been removed. I have removed the unchecked the CSS color property inside this CSS class, and since it already had the brown class with it, now this has taken preference. If I uncheck this one, you can see the element level rule has been applied, so it is getting the color red. If I uncheck the font size, you can see that the size reduces for all of them. Okay, so this is a pretty useful tool for us, and we can play around with all of the properties, toggle them, uncheck them, using the developer tools under the styles tab. So I hope you guys make use of this and play around with this feature of the browser. Okay, it will help you understand things very fast. All right, let me just do a refresh, and yeah, let's get rid of the royal blue class from here, and let me just add it here. Okay, so now this third element has this royal blue class. Okay, so so far we have seen inline styles. Okay, when we had used the style attribute, this is the second way where we have defined CSS rules and added them inside the style tag. Now let's do one thing. Let me add another HTML file over here. Let's call it as second.html. Okay, so another file or another website. Okay, and over here also what I want is I want to add a h1 tag, and so this is like some heading, for example. Okay, and let me just go to this. So I will just say second.html, and you can see this text over here, some heading, right? Now what if I want all of the rules that I have defined over here to be applied to this page as well? Okay, so how would I do that? Should I copy this entire style tag and paste it over here like this? I guess this will also get the job done, right? So, but it's, I mean, it's kind of, once again, it's repetitive in a way, right? You are copying the entire set of styles and it's taking up space within your HTML document. Is there a better way of, adding styles to our website? Do you guys know? Let me know in the comments. So most of you guys are right that we can add a external CSS file. So let's see how we can do that. So let's create a file called style.css, CSS for the CSS extension, this. And then over here what we will do is, since we want to use these styles, I will just copy these from here and paste them here. All right, Let's save this, and I want to add this style. So this is the style sheet, and I want to add it to our index page. Okay, so right now nothing has been applied, right? If we do a refresh, all the styling information is gone. So I will go to the head tag and make use of the link tag, link CSS, and you can see that it has this href attribute, and you give the path to your CSS file over here. And if I save this, we can see that all the styles that we had defined within this have been linked to this index.html, and they have been applied. Okay, and if I get rid of this from here, and let's go to the second page. If I do a refresh, all the information is lost. Once again, I need to add a link to the style sheet. I want to reuse the same style sheet, so I will just make use of this, and if I click on save, you can see that since we have not specified any class name over here, it's using the element based rule and giving it the color red and a font size of 40 pixels. Okay, so far so good. So this way of adding a style sheet is known as an external style sheet. Okay, so this is the external way. So the first way that we looked at was inline styling, then the second way was the style tag, and the third way is adding a reference to the style sheet. Okay, all right, so far is everything clear to you guys? All right, let's do one thing. Let's take a short break of 5 minutes. Okay, and so how are you guys finding the sessions so far? You can let me know in the comments. Have they been helpful? Did you try to build the portfolio on your own? All right, so far the feedback has been good. I can see on the chat you guys are saying yes, good session, it's been wonderful. And will we be learning Redux? Yes, we will be learning Redux when we will be moving towards React. Okay, and yeah, the pace is a bit slow because we are considering the fact that not everybody that is attending these streams knows everything. We are targeting people who do not know anything about HTML or CSS, so we are just going a bit slow, but we'll be covering all the core concepts and we'll be moving to the advanced topics as well. So don't worry. Okay, if you already know some of these things, it can be a good refresher for you. Yeah, we'll be learning Flexbox and Grid as well in the upcoming days. I'm not sure about Bootstrap. If possible, we will. Otherwise, the focus will be on Tailwind. Some of you guys have asked me how many days will it take to learn CSS. That's a very good question. Um, it will take some time. I mean, we'll be focusing, we'll be learning some of the other CSS features throughout the duration of this course, but your learning will continue for many, many years to come, okay? Because it's a complex topic and you understand things with experience. So you can reduce the number of years by practicing a lot. So I would say practice is the key, trying out different things, trying out different tags, Googling them. You can refer to W3 schools or MDN. Uh, for today's session, quite a lot of the links will be shared with you guys when you when you go for the homework which is related to this session on the Devsnest website. You will find the quite a lot of useful links. Okay. All right. So so far, let's get back to the coding part now. Okay. And somebody asks, okay, just one more question. How many attributes can we have inside a tag? As many attributes as that tag. I mean, it is possible for that tag. Not all the tags have the same attributes. Different tags have different attributes. Some of them have common attributes, like style is a common attribute. Uh, so you need to find that out. Okay, I can't teach you everything. We'll be covering like most of the attributes of the tags that we'll be using, but there would be other attributes maybe that we are not covering, so you can look that up on your own. Okay. Due to shortage of time, we can't cover everything, but we'll try to acquaint you with most of the things. All right. So the next thing that I want to cover is the box model. Okay. So far we have seen there are different ways of defining your styles. So this thing in its entirety is known as a CSS rule. Okay. This is the selector. So this was the ID selector, this was the class selector, and then this was the element selector. This is known as the declaration, right? So the declaration consists of a property and its value. All right. So property and its value. So this is known as a declaration, correct? And so this is the first declaration inside this rule. This is the second declaration. So how many rules do you see over here? Let me know in the chat. Okay, some of you have said 2, some of you are saying 4. The correct answer is 4. This is the first rule, this is the second rule, this is the third, and then this is the fourth one. Okay. All right. Now let's move on to another important topic known as the box model. Let me just comment this out. And what I will do is let's make use of a new tag known as the div tag. And what we will do is we'll define a class. Let's call it as box. Okay. And let's define that class over here, box. Let's give this box a width of 400 pixels and a height of 400 pixels. Okay, so the box isn't visible. Let's do one thing. Let's give it a background color of, for example, purple. All right. So let me save this, and we're on the second page. Let me do a refresh, and you can see that this box has been created. It has a height and a width of 400 by 400 and a background color of purple. Okay. All right. Now let's look at a couple of important properties. So you can see that let's each element. All right, this is the content for the element. Just give me a sec. Let me expand this on of the full screen level. All right, you can see that this element has been applied a height and a width, and we are giving it the background color of purple. And over here you can see a box. Okay, so right now we have just given a width of 400 by 400, which has been applied to the content, right? Apart from this, you can see all of these other properties. So let's do one thing. Let's learn the border property now. So what I will do is I will give a new property over here as border, and let me define a border of 1 pixel, the border style as solid, and the border color, the default border color is black, right? If we click on this if we see this over here, all right, if we click on this triangle, you can see that there's some information with regards to the border, right? So the border style is solid and the border width is 1 pixel across all of them. Let me increase the size over here. Okay, you can see that now it has a 7 pixel border, and you can see that this border value is available to you. All right, so for the sake of convenience, the border surrounds the the browser surrounds the content of an element with a box like structure. Okay, which allows us to define the spacing between various elements and the border. Okay, so the next property that we will be looking at is the padding. All right, so let me add a style over here. Let me give it a padding of 8 pixels. Okay, let me increase it a bit more. Let me make it 25 for example. So let me get rid of this background color now, and you can see that this is the content of 400 by 400, and a padding has been applied. So padding is the space between the border and the content. All right, so this, if you want to add spacing between the border and the content, you can make use of padding. All right, and you can see that there is some margin being applied over here as well. We look at the margin property as well, but what you need to visualize is that whenever we are defining a tag, let me add some text over here as well, some random text. All right, let's save this. So you can see that some text has been added over here, and since I had defined all of the properties over here, when I made some changes over here, all of the styling was lost because the browser auto refreshed. So you can define styles over here, but make sure to copy the styles back to your style sheet. Okay, so let me just quickly add the padding once again, padding of 25 pixels. Okay, so you can see that now some space is available between the box and the content, right? So if I uncheck this, you can see that the text has is sticking to the inside of the box. When I enable the padding, the text is slightly shifting down. Okay, so this is the content area, and we have added a padding. All right, another thing that you guys can notice is that the padding can be applied in 4 different directions. So if you see, this is the padding at the top, this is the padding at the right hand side, this is the padding at the bottom, and this is the padding at the left level. If I expand this arrow, you can see that individually padding has been applied. So when we write it like this, we are giving the same value to all of the across all of the edges. Okay, but suppose I want to apply the padding individually, all right, at all of these directions. So you just need to remember the keyword T. You just need to remember this acronym trouble, okay, to remember the way in which the directions in which the padding is applied. So TRBL, trouble, all right, top, right, bottom, and then left. So suppose we just want to apply the padding at the top, so we will just say 12. All right, so it added some padding at the top. Now we want to add a padding of, for example, 24 pixels to at the right hand side, so it would have done that. Then we want to apply a padding of 12 pixels at the bottom once again, and let's apply a padding of 48 pixels on the left edge. All right, so that is how we are able to do that. You can see that when I hover over this property, the left hand side has the most padding, right? You can see this uh, this area on the left hand side, this greenish color. If you see, let me get rid of this background, and now when I hover over this, you can see this greenish color. It is most thick towards the left hand side. That is because we have given a padding of 48 pixels over here, and then we have a padding at the top for 12 and 12 at the bottom. Suppose I want to change the padding at the bottom, what I can do over here is I can change the value for this third one. You can make use of the up and down arrow keys, and you can see that this value is being updated, right? Okay, so it's possible for us to give all of these values individually like this, or you can specify a common value like this. All right, so it is equal across all of the edges. Then there is another way, that suppose I want to give the same padding at the top and the bottom, and at the right and the left, so we can do that as well. So this is known as the shorthand property. And here suppose so I just specify two values over here, okay, 24 and 48 for example. So 24 would be repeated for top and bottom, and 48 would be repeated for left and right. Okay, so you can see that over here when you expand it. So top and bottom is 24 and right and left is 48. So this is another way by which you can define the padding. Now let's do one thing. Let's get rid of the height and width, and let's just add a border over here as well of 2 pixels, and the border is solid. Okay, and let me just copy this styling from the browser, and I'll just paste it here. All right, so we have this. So far we have seen how to add spacing between the content and the boundary of this element. Now suppose we want to add some spacing in between different elements. What I will do is I will add another, let me just repeat this, okay, and let me just call it as second item, and then this is the third item. Let me save this. You can see that all of these three elements are sticking to each other. Okay, so when you want to add spacing between the element and its content, you make use of the padding. When you want to add spacing between different elements, we will be making use of the third property, which is the margin. Okay, so margin works similar to padding. You can specify margin across all of the four edges, or you can just apply it selectively. Okay, so let's add some spacing just at the bottom. So what we can do is we can just say margin bottom. and let's add a spacing of 16 pixels. So you can see that this gap has been added between all of these elements, right? And suppose I want to add a margin at the top as well. I can either make use of the margin property like this, or I can say I can just say margin top and specify 16 pixels over here. All right, so if you look at this right now, you can see that there is a margin of 16 pixels at the top, and the bottom there's a border of 2 pixels. There is a padding of 24, and this is the space taken up by the content. All right, is this clear to you guys, the difference between margin, padding, and the border? Okay, so is the box model clear to you guys? Yeah, even for margin, trouble applies, TRBL. Okay, so instead of writing it like this, we can just say margin 16 pixels, and we want to give a different margin for right and left. So for example, 24 pixels. So you can see a different margin has been applied. All right, is this clear to you guys? They are somewhat similar in terms of spacing, but you can see the difference. If I get rid of the margin, all of the elements are sticking to each other. Okay, so margin is, you can think of it as like the personal space of the element. Okay, if we apply it to human terms, margin would be when COVID was at its peak, we needed to maintain a margin of 6 feet between two people, right? So that is what margin would be. Okay, and suppose you're wearing a jacket, right? So padding would be the cushioning between the material and you know the item being used. That would be the padding, that is the internal space between the material the jacket is made up of and the stuffing that has been added to the jacket. Okay, okay, so I think we have learned a little bit about the box model as well. So to space and organize different elements, we make use of the box model, and it has these properties. Another property that we should look at quickly is the border radius. All right, suppose I want to change the curve. I want this part to be curved. Okay, so if you notice that this is the top right hand corner, right? So border radius. Okay, and I want it to be applied, so I just say, give me a sec, border radius, and then after that right. Okay, top right, for example, and I want to give this as 16 pixels. Hang on a sec, I'm making a mistake. Border radius top right. Okay, let's just, okay, so I need to say border top right radius. Okay, so I was just messing up with the order. Let's copy this quickly. Okay, and let's add it over here. you can see that this top right hand corner, this has a slight curve now. Okay, similarly, if I want to do it for border, then top, or rather I want to do it for the bottom corner, so I can say border bottom, and I want to do it for the left one, and I want to do it for at 25 pixels. Okay, so you can see that this border radius has been applied over here. Okay, and suppose I want to do it for all of them. I can make use of the border radius property directly and give all of them a border radius of 25 pixels. So you can see that all of them have these rounded edges. All right, so this one has taken precedence now over these others. All right, that is why you can see them as being striped. Okay, and suppose you want to turn this into a circle. You can do that by making use of percentage. So we can say border radius 50%. Let's do one thing. Let's give it a width and a height. So let's give it a width of 400 pixels by 400 pixels. All right, so you can see now we have some circles. If I get rid of this border radius, we will have squares, right? And if I add this border radius, you can see that we have a circle now. So the border radius allows us to manipulate the shape of an element. All right. Okay. So so far we have learned a little bit about the box model and its properties. The next thing that we will be focusing on is the units. Let's learn a little bit about the different units that we are going to be using. So we have already learned about pixels, right? So pixels is one of the most standard units. Now let's take a look at some of the other units as well. So what I will do is let's do a quick refresh over here, and let me comment this out. So let's do one thing. Let's create a div, and within the div let's add a paragraph. This is some text. All right, now what I want to do is I want to select this text, inspect it, and suppose I want to update its font size. So either I can make use of pixels. So suppose I set the font size as 12 pixels, you can see that it has become small. If I increase the size, it is doing so. Another unit that we can use over here is EM. So let me just specify 1 EM, for example. All right, now what this means is that it is this value is relative to the container element. So in this case, this div has a default font size, okay, of 16 pixels, which is coming from the browser. So when I say 1 EM, even this paragraph has been applied a size of 1 EM. Suppose I change it to 2, it will become double of 16. That would be 32. All right, and for example, I change it back to 1, and this is the parent element, right, for this paragraph, or this is the container element. What I will do is I will set the font size for this as well. Let me set the font size as 20, for example, 20 pixels. All right, so now you can see that since we were making use of 1 EM over here, and it is sizing this element relative to its parent, if we keep on modifying the parent's font size, it is automatically applying the change to this one. Okay, so if I double this, that means I make it 2, you will always see whenever I'm updating this value, it will be double of that. The paragraph's font size would be double of that. So for example, this is the parent's font size is 16. This would be somewhere around 32. Okay. If we if we click on this computer tab and just search for font size for this element, you can see that it is 32 pixels, right? Okay, so this is the EM style, which is always relative to its parent element. So this, I haven't found much use cases with regards to this unit, but there's another one which is quite handy, known as rem. All right, now this is relative to the root element. In our case, which would it would be the HTML tag, right? So if we look at the font size for the HTML tag, which is coming from the browser, it is 16 pixels. So similarly, suppose what I want is wherever I have a paragraph, you know, so wherever I have a paragraph, so suppose let me add another paragraph over here. This is another para. Okay, let's save this, and what I will do is, for all the paragraphs, I will say set the font size to 2em, for example, right? Initially, let's keep it as 1. So you can see that it's applying the style relative to the HTML tag. All right. Now, suppose wherever a paragraph is being used, I want to double its font size, or maybe I change the font size at the root level. Okay. So for example, for the HTML element, I change its font size to 32 pixels. So wherever this element was being used, the paragraph's value has been updated. And suppose I want the paragraph always to be twice of the root element, I can do so like this. All right. So I've changed it to 32, for example. If I reduce it to, for example, back to 16, and if I look at the font size for the paragraph in the computed property, you can see that it is 32, because we have set the font size to twice rem, right? And whenever we use rem, it is relative to this HTML tag. All right. So it is useful, like if you're trying to change the font size of the browser, because there are some people with visual impairments, so they generally change the font size. And if we use relative font sizing or the rem unit, it will appropriately double the font size. For margin and padding, I would recommend using pixels, but in case of font sizes, we can make use of either pixels or we can make use of rem, because it scales the size of the text proportionately. All right. Okay. And moving on to let's understand another property known as the let's also understand one thing. So if you notice that the font size, rather, let me take another example. So here we have this div, right? Let me change the color. Okay, let me change it to red, for example. You can see that the element which reside inside this div tag. So let me add another element, say for example, let me add another. So this is the second para. All right, we have, let's set the color for this div. So what we will do is give it an ID, and let's call it as red color, and we will add a rule for it. So since we're using the ID selector, we need to specify the hash symbol, and let's give it the color red. All right. So if you notice that whatever is inside this div, any number of elements that we will be adding, they're getting the color red automatically. That is because some properties are inherited. Okay. Um, so properties such as color or font size, they are inherited. And there are other properties. So for example, if I set the width to say 200 pixels, okay, so you can see that the width is being applied to all of these elements as well, but there are some properties which do not get inherited. All right, so we'll be looking at them a bit later on, but I just wanted you to know that certain properties are inherited. They get passed down from the parent element to its child element. Okay. And okay, let's move on to another interesting topic, which is if you have noticed that if I make use of this div tag and let me get rid of the width, okay, we can see that it's taking up the entire space or the entire width which is available to it. Whereas if I use let me add a anchor tag over here. All right, and let me specify some text over here, and let me add another anchor tag and another anchor tag. So for example, second and third. All right, so you can see that they're appearing besides each other. Okay, so the amount of space that this text is taking up, only that much width is being used by this element. So like, did you guys wonder like why this is happening? Like one element is taking up the entire space and another element is taking up only the amount of space that it requires. Okay, so it is happening because of the display property. All right, so each element by default has a certain display property associated with it. So a div tag is a block level element. So if we inspect the div element, you can see that it has a display of block. What this means is that this element will take up the entire space which is available to it. All right, whereas this anchor tag is if you look at the display for this, it is inline, which means that it will only take up the space that it requires. All right, so all of these are inline elements. Okay, and this is a block element. Similarly, a paragraph is also a block level element, so it will take up the entire width and it will fill it up. Whatever width is available to it, it will try to fill that up. That is why it's taking up the entire row, whereas all of these are appearing besides each other because they are inline elements. Okay, so this is the default way in which the browser positions all of these elements, which is according to the flow. So if it's a block element, it will take up the entire, width which is available to it. So because we added another paragraph over here, the first one is being greedy. It's taking up as much space as it needs. So the second one doesn't have any space for it, right? So it's moving on to the next line and it's also taking up the entire space which is available. Now, when we come to the third one, okay, since this is an inline type element, this is only taking up the space which it needs, right? So there's no extra, spacing after this. Then we have a third category, which is known as inline block. So suppose what I want is that this paragraph should only take up the space that it needs. All right. So what we will do is we will change the display property from inline to inline block. Okay, so you can see that this paragraph is taking up the space that it needs, and this one is taking up the space that it needs. Since there was more space available, all of these three tags have shifted to the first row itself. All right. Okay, so this is how you can do it. We could have also changed it to just inline. All right, so you can see that now is just taking up the entire space, but the padding is lost. Okay, if I change it back to inline block, you can see that there is some padding being applied to the top and bottom. But in case of inline elements, we cannot apply padding or margin to them because they stick in the line. What we can do is we can apply a margin and padding towards the left and right. Okay, because it allows us to style the elements in the left side and the right hand side. Okay, because it's possible to add some spacing within a single line. But if we, when the display style is in line, if we try to add a padding and margin at the top, there will be no effect. Let me show you what I mean. So let me quickly select this. Let me add a margin top of 16 pixels. All right, you can see that this is having no effect whatsoever, right? Because this is an inline element. But if I try to add a margin on its left of, for example, 16 pixels, you can see that it shifted slightly, right? You can see that this particular element now has a margin on its left hand side. Okay, even a margin top has been applied, but it's not having any effect. So in cases where you want to have like inline styling, but you also want to apply some uh, styling at the top as well as the bottom. So if I change the margin for this one, it will allow me to do that. You can see that if I just set the margin top to 16 pixels, and if I keep on adding this, you can see that it is increasing the padding for this, sorry, the margin for this. All right, so that is the difference between an inline and an inline block as well as a block element. So I hope that is clear to you. Different elements have different display styles. Somebody is asking in the comments that will we cover the position property? We will be covering that in the future lessons. Okay, today just I wanted to cover the basic part. Okay, then the next similarly we have just like the anchor tag, we have another tag which is the span tag. Even this is inline, is also inline, and if I save this, you can see that let me add another span tag over here, and if I save this, you can see that it is being added right besides this existing span. So this is another inline type of element. Okay, and so is this part clear to you guys, like how elements take up space? This is the default way how elements take up the space. If you're not sure like which element is of which type, or what you can do is you can view the developer tools, inspect that element, go to the computer tab and just search for display. It will tell you the type of display for it. Okay, you might see it over here, but in case you're not able to find it, you can go to the computer tab and just filter it out. Okay, All right, so now let's come back to our portfolio and let's apply the knowledge that we have learned today. Okay. Yeah, I'll be applying, moving this code to a GitHub repo, and that information will be available to you guys in Discord in a day's time. Okay. All right. So, what I will do is let me just close this and let's open. What we will do is I'll just make a copy of the existing portfolio so that we can see the difference between the two once we are done. All right, and let me just open this in VS Code quickly. So file, open folder, and let's go to documents, Devsnest, streams, portfolio copy. Okay. So this has all the changes that we had made so far. Let me open this using the live server. So this is the portfolio that we had from before. Let's apply some styling to this and make it better. Okay. So the first thing that we will do is let's wrap all of this in a div tag. Okay. And what I will do is let me select everything over here. Let me just collapse this and move this inside the div tag. All right, so you can see so far there has been no change. The next thing that we will do is let's add a style sheet over here. Let's call it as styles.css. Let's link it in our head. Okay. It's called styles, styles. All right, and you can see that the body has a default margin. Okay, let's get rid of this. We will be adding our own. So the default margin which has been added by the browser, let's set it to 0. So you can see now everything is sticking. All right, and we have created this div. Let's give it a class. Let's call it as container. All right, and over here let's come back and define this class. Let's give it a padding of 16 pixels, so you can see the spacing is now available. Okay, then the next thing that we want to do is uh, the image and this part, let's move it inside another div tag. All right, and I'm doing this using the option key and the up down arrow keys to move the content. You can check the shortcut for that in Windows. It might be the alt key. All right, so I've added this inside a div. Okay, and what I want to do now is let's give this a class. Let's call it as intro. All right, let's define this class over here, intro, and what I want to do is I want to give a background color to this. Let's pick a shade of black, and what I will do is let's quickly pick a lighter shade, so we are in the end of the spectrum. So if you want to open this tool, just click on this color. It opens this tool. Just pick a lighter color. All right, we have selected the color, and let me copy this and paste this here. All right, so we have picked a slightly light color, and another thing that we want to do is whatever text that is available, let's give it a color. Let's give it the color, not column rule, color, and let's give it the color white. Let's save this so you can see that this text is available. And let's do one thing. So I had taught you guys about margin, right? You can see some space is being applied over here. What I want is I want some padding. Uh, Padding inside this intro div. So let's give it a padding of 16 pixels. So you can see some padding has been added, but I want this padding which is available over here. I want to get rid of this because I want this entire area to have this black background. So what I will do is I will make use of the margin property, and I can also specify a negative margin. So we know that we had added a padding of 16. So we'll cancel it out using a negative margin. So now you can see that this has, stretched and, collapsed that default padding just for this element. All right. Okay. Then, and another thing that we will do is we want to center this in the middle, right? So we'll make use of the text align property and give it the value center. When we save this, you can see that all of this text and this image has been moved to the center. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to target this image tag, right? This image tag is within our intro element. So what I will do is I can target this using a CSS rule. So within the intro, where we have our image, okay, so this is another way by which you can define a selector. You can combine multiple types of selectors. So we combine the class selector with the element selector. So just within this intro, when we add this image, right, we want to give it a border. We want to make use of the border radius property, and I want to make the edges as rounded, and let's make use of 16 pixels. You can see that all of the edges have been curved. All right. And what we will do is we'll get rid of this height and width from here, and we can specify the height for the image as 300 of, let's make it 400, and let's give it a width of 400 pixels. You can see that now this image has a height and a width of 400 pixels. All right. And this is um, this is what we have over here. Let's do one thing. Let's add a paragraph over here, and what we will do is we have these social media profile links, right? Let's copy them, rather let's cut them, and let's paste them over here. So you can see that these images have been added, but there's a problem. Since these are also inside the intro and these are also images, uh, they are getting applied a height and width of 400 pixels. Okay, so what we will do is we will basically give this a class. Let's call it as social links. All right, let me save this. Let's define a class social links. Okay, and within this, when we have an image tag, right, let's give it a height of 20 pixels and a width of 20 pixels. Okay, so you can see that all of these are appearing besides each other, and this border radius is being applied, right? We don't want this border radius for these elements. So what we will do is let's make this image super specific. So what I will do is I will give it an ID. Okay, and let's call it as profile image. Okay, So instead of this intro and image, I'll make use of the ID attribute, and let me call it as profile image. Okay, so you can see just this is now having the rounded appearance. All of these do not have the rounded appearance, but can you notice there is this, slight underline kind of a thing, this underline thing that you see. What we will do is, so the anchor tag, so within the social links we want to select the anchor tags, right? And you can see this slide. Let me zoom this for you guys so that, oh wait, I think the zoom got applied here. Let me close this, and what I will do is, let me just zoom this area. Okay, can you see this slight purplish underline? This is coming because of the text decoration, the default styling for the anchor tag. You see this underline, right, whenever you use the href attribute. So we want to set it to none. All right, when we set it to none, you can see those purple gaps have vanished. Another thing that we will do is, let's add some spacing between these elements. So we will make use of margin. Okay, so at the top and bottom, we don't want any margin, so we'll make use of the auto property. But at the right and the left, we want a margin of 16 pixels. So let's do that. So you can see that this spacing has been added, right? Okay, and all of these links are now clickable. Let me reset the zoom level for this. Let's make it 120. Okay. All right. Now this is working as before. Whenever I click on this link, it will open my profile in a new tag. Okay. All right. And let's do one thing. So let's expand this. You can see that we have this nice background with our image, and there's this text, and our social media links have been added over here. Now let's try to do some styling for this element. So what we will do is wrap this section, okay, inside a div. Let's pick up all of this. I'll move it inside this div. Let me give it an ID. Let's call it as about me. All right. And what we want is, if you remember the font, the font size and font style are some of the properties which are inherited. So let's do one thing at the body level. Let's change the font family, and let's pick Arial, Helvetica, and sans serif, so that our content is easier to read. It has gotten rid of some of the things which, the serif fonts have this. If I comment this out, you can see that this, this kind of a line which is coming for all the elements, it's difficult to read on the browser. So let's pick a sans serif font. All right, so which is easier on the eyes. So we have done that. So all this font styling has been applied across all of the elements. Now what we want to do is, we want to let's move all of these inside a div actually. So div, let's give it an ID. Let's call it as qualifications, and let's move the content which is related to that inside this div. Let's add another div. Let's give it a ID hobbies, and let's move the content related to that over here. And similarly, let's create a div. Let's give it the ID technologies. Okay, using emit, it automatically created that div with this ID tag. And let's move this entire table over here. Okay, let's save this. We'll no longer need this reach me at, since we have added the links at the top. Um, if you want, you can make this image as rounded. That is up to you. All right. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is so within our container, right? Within our container class, we want to target the immediate div element. All right. And we want to select the h1 tag which is inside it, and let's give it a text align of center. Okay, and let's see what happened. So this is the, oh, we are making use of the h2 tags, so that's why this didn't work. So I need to change this to h2, and now you can see that all of the divs, all of the first divs, you know, so what, we are using a different kind of selector now. So the element which has the container class and the div which immediately appears, right after the uh, all the divs which are, children, immediate children of the container, right, will have the text align property to center. Okay, we'll have the text align property as center for them. Okay, so for example, let me add another div over here. Okay, and let me add another h2 tag here. All right, so let's do one thing. Let's make it even more specific. So what we did is we selected the div tags which are appearing within the container, and only the first div which has the h2 tag will have its text aligned as sender. So to target just the specific or the first element which is preceding, we make use of this greater than sign. Okay, this tells the browser that it needs to select the immediate h2 tag which is appearing. All right, now in this case this was the first div tag, right, and this is the first h2 tag which is coming. Now this is another div tag and this is another h2 tag, but since this is not immediately preceding, okay, so for example, let me show you what I mean. So if we collapse all of these div elements, okay, when I say container and I use the greater than sign div, it is selecting basically all of these divs, right, because they are immediate children of this tag. These are all the direct descendants of this div tag, right? And since this sorry, not this one. Now since this div tag is not a direct descendant of this container, right, it is not getting applied the text align property. That is why you see it over here. For example, if I were to get rid of this property, right, this greater than sign, it will apply the text center property to all of the divs which are inside, sorry, all of the h2 tags which are inside a div. All right, so since we do not want that, let me just undo this, and you can see that it has centrally aligned all of these elements. This isn't useful to us, so let me get rid of this. Okay, so we can see that this information has been applied. Let's do one thing. Let's also add some styling for our table element. Let's give the table element a border of 1 pixel, and let's give a solid border. So you can see that it has been it has this border applied, but we want to add some border between the rows, right? So what I will do is I will select the tr, okay, and I will also select the td. So we have so wherever we use the td tag, a border has been applied. Let me also add a border for this heading. So the tag for that is th. So you can see that this border has been applied, but this isn't, generally we do not have so many borders. So the table has a special property known as border collapse, right? And we'll set it to collapse. When I save this, you can see the additional borders have been removed. And what I want is let's add some padding and margin for these elements. Okay. So for the th and the td, what we want is we want to give it a padding of 8 pixels, for example. So you can see that once I applied this padding, it has been, there's some nice spacing between the content and the cell, as you can see, right? And what we will do is let's give this, let's see, let's inspect this quickly. Okay, and what we will do is we will give this a display. Let's give this table row a width of 100%, or rather 100 view width. Um, give, give me a sec. Let's take a width of 100%. All right. So if we give it a width of 100%, it is taking up the entire space. Or what we could have done is we could have said that this table has a display style of block, but you see that the boundary has been extended, but it's not taking up the rows and the columns are not taking up the entire space. So what we will do is we'll just specify width as 100%. So now you can see that our table is taking up the entire width which is available to it. Okay. So in some scenarios, we can make use of a percentage based unit as well. All right. Another thing that we will do is we will change the so all of the paragraphs which are coming over here, what we will do is we will select all of the paragraphs and let's give them a font size of 1.5 rem. So you can see the all of this text has become slightly more readable, which is coming inside the paragraphs. Okay, so this is how we can do that. And another thing that we can do is we can modify the spacing between the lines. So we can do so using a property known as line height. So let's change it to 1 rem, for example. This isn't looking very good. Let's make it twice or maybe thrice. I think 2 rem is good enough. So you can see some spacing has been added between these lines. Okay. All right. So we have added some basic styling. Now what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to apply some styling, change the font size for this as well as this section as well. And you can also change the color for the headers, like that's an exercise that you can do. But for now, just try to do this, play around with the layout. Change the border radius. If you like a rounded image, you can give it a border radius of 50%, like this. Try out different things. Try giving this a different color, try giving this section a different color. And as we learn more CSS functionality, we'll enhance this further and style it further, right? Okay, so that is the homework for today. I want you guys to update your portfolio based on whatever you have learned in tonight's in the lesson today. And if you guys have any more doubts, I'll see you in the Discord Mahasabha voice channel. Okay, so that is it for today's session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned a lot of things, and we'll meet on Monday next. So you guys have a 2 days break now. Practice whatever you have learned and go through all the resource links which will be shared in the Devsnest website related to the day 2 lesson. Okay, all right. If you enjoyed it, like the video and subscribe to the channel. And you guys can leave your comments and share the videos with your friends and family members who are looking into getting into web dev. All right, so I'll see you guys on Monday. Take care and have a happy weekend.